would like to offer my sincere congratulations to the class of 2014, the 102nd class to graduate from Shenandoah Valley Academy. This is a significant personal accomplishment to graduate from an institution with a long and rich history and to join its alumni community. You should feel good about your achievement, but you should also be cognizant of your new responsibilities to your community and to prepare yourself even further to help make the world a better place. My goal today is to help you to understand what you're about to enter into. You know, I always wanted to be a doctor. And, you know, as a youngster, anything on television or radio about medicine was something that interested me. And I even liked going to the doctor's office. And going to the hospital was the best thing in the world because I could hear the PA system asking for the different doctors to go one place or the other. And I would imagine that one day they would be saying, Dr. Carson, Dr. Carson. And those dreams are sometimes the things that really drive you on when nothing else seems to be working. But, you know, I decided I wanted to be a missionary doctor because I listened to the mission stories in church and Sabbath school. And they frequently featured missionary doctors who seemed like the most noble people on the face of the earth. And they went all over the place at great personal sacrifice to bring not only physical but mental and spiritual healing to people. And I said when I was 8 years old, that's what I'm going to do. And that was my dream until I was 13. When, having grown up in dire poverty, I decided I'd rather be rich. So at that point, I said, I think I'll be a psychiatrist. And they seemed like rich people on TV. You know, they drove Jaguars and they lived in their mansions and had the big plush offices, and all they had to do was talk to crazy people all day. And it seemed like I was doing that anyway. So I said, this is going to work out extremely well. And, you know, I started reading Psychology Today. Everybody brought me their problems. I would sit down and stroke my chin and say, tell me about your mama. And, you know, I did advanced psych in college and in medical school. But the interesting thing is, as I was in medical school, I started asking myself, what are you really, really good at? Because I believe God gives everybody special gifts and talents. And I started analyzing my life, and I realized I had a lot of eye-hand coordination, the ability to think in 3 dimensions. I was a very careful person, never knocked things over and said, oops. And I love to dissect things. And I put all that together. I said, you would be a terrific neurosurgeon. Now, at that time, there had only ever been 8 black neurosurgeons in the world. And a lot of people thought that was a strange ideal for me, but it seemed very natural to me. It seemed exactly what I should be doing. And obviously, it worked out extremely well because I was following, logically, where my talents were. And that's what you should be thinking about also. God has given every single one of you specific gifts and talents. And you should look for those things and develop them. And it's not necessarily what your mama does or what your daddy does or what your friends do. It's what you are particularly gifted to do. And make sure you expose yourself to a lot of things so that you know which one of those things is the one that really fits the talent that you have. It will make all the difference in the world. Well, you know, there were a lot of problems for me along my way of achieving my dream, not the least of which was the fact that my parents got divorced. My mother only had a 3rd grade education. We were thrust into dire poverty. There was never money for anything. I remember as a 5th grader, they used to sell popcorn balls. And the teacher would say, everybody bring a nickel tomorrow to buy a popcorn ball. Some people would bring a dime or a quarter. I never had a popcorn ball. We never had an extra nickel, and they looked so good. And in retrospect, I realized it's just popcorn and syrup, but it seems so good when you can't get it. But, you know, there was never money, and I just hated being poor. It just bothered the heck out of me. I thought there was some mistake. I should have been born in a different family. But anyway, there I was, stuck. And interestingly enough, you know, my mother just believed that somehow I was smart. I was getting terrible grades. Everybody called me dummy. I was always the butt of all the jokes. But she prayed and asked God to give her wisdom and came up with the idea of turning off the TV and making us read books. And I hated that idea. It seemed like the worst ideal in the world. But back in those days, you had to do what your parents told you, so I had to do it anyway. But interestingly enough, as I started reading those books, I started reading about different people. It really began to impact me. I read the autobiography of Booker T. Washington. It's called Up From Slavery. And born a slave, it was illegal for slaves to read. You should think about why that was, by the way. But it was illegal. He taught himself to read anyway. And you know, he read everything he could get his hands on. He became an advisor to 2 presidents. That had a profound effect on me, thinking about what he was able to do in terms of making himself that valuable. And then I read about Joseph in the Bible, sold into slavery by his own brothers. He didn't say, bummer, my own brothers sold me into slavery. He said, if I'm going to be a slave, I'll be the best slave there is. And he ends up as the overseer of Potiphar's household, the captain of the Egyptian guard, a very responsible position. And then Potiphar's wife lays eyes on him and says, wow, it's a good-looking dude. And she, you know, she makes moves on him, but he is true to his principles. And, you know, she winds up telling a lie on him and saying, you know, he advanced on her. He gets wound up throwing to prison. And of course, obviously Potiphar didn't believe his wife because he would have had him executed. But anyway, he goes to prison. He doesn't say, bummer, I'm living up to the best of my ability, following my moral codes, and I end up in jail. He says, no, if I'm going to be a prisoner, I'll be the best prisoner there is. Ends up with a responsible position in the prison, starts interpreting dreams, ends up as the governor of Egypt. You know, those kinds of stories told me that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you in life is you. It's not somebody else. It's not the circumstances. Nobody can keep you from achieving if you really want to do it. And as I started reading those kind of stories, I didn't hate poverty anymore. And the reason was because I knew I could change it. What a difference it makes when you know that your destiny is in your own hands. And that's what I want you to remember. As you graduate from here, you go on to college, remember all the things that you've learned at Shenandoah Valley Academy. I remember when I went off to college, you know, everybody was smoking pot and other kind of drugs and free love and all this stuff. But, you know, I remembered the things that I had learned as a youth, and it protected me from those things and allowed me to move on and learn the things that I needed to do. So you don't have to yield to peer pressure. You don't have to yield to political correctness, because you know where your anchor is. Your anchor is your belief in God. That's what will save you in the long run. I had a rapid career as I realized all these things. By the time I was 33, I was chief of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins. And it was fabulous, all the different kinds of cases that I got to do. Some of them extremely challenging, very controversial. But I would always pray and ask God to give me wisdom. And He always did. And things worked out time and time again. And, you know, my reputation began to expand. But I realized that it wasn't me. It was Him. And that's what you need to realize as you go out there. No matter how successful you are, remember where that success comes from. And that will keep you grounded. And remember to think big. Each one of those letters means something special. The T is for talent, which God gave to every single person, not just the ability to sing and dance and throw a ball, but intellectual talent. Develop that. You are made in the image of God. That means you're no dummy. The H is for honesty. Lead a clean and honest life. You won't put skeletons in the closet. And if you always tell the truth, you don't have to try to remember what you said 3 months ago. The I is for insight, which comes from people who've already gone where you're trying to go. Learn from their triumphs, learn from their mistakes. If you can learn from somebody else's mistakes, you can move much faster than if you have to make all the mistakes yourself. The N is for nice. Be nice to people. Because once they get over their suspicion of why you're being nice, they'll be nice to you. Don't take your cues from the people in my generation who like to call each other names and act like absolute buffoons. You can do better than that. The K is for knowledge, which is the thing that makes you into a more valuable person. You get to determine how valuable you are. The B is for books, which is the source of that knowledge. Some people say I don't need to read books. I can get all the knowledge I want from watching DVDs and videos. Well, that's like saying you can develop your muscles by watching somebody else lift weights. You got to make your mind work if you want your mind to work for you. The second I is for in-depth learning, learning for the sake of knowledge and understanding as opposed to superficial learning. And the last letter, G, is for God. People are trying to drive God out of our society. Don't let them drive him out of your life. This is the solid anchor that will allow you to make your mark. He loves you. He wants you to succeed. You have to make sure you put him in your center of your life. I want to congratulate all of you, and I'm sure that all the parents and the teachers join me in this. You know, I've never met a successful person who didn't have a teacher they could point to, but this is a very significant milestone in your life. Thanks to all the parents who supported your children's choice to attend Shenandoah Valley Academy and to receive a Christian education, all the personal sacrifice that went along with that. Thank you, faculty, for your selfless service to these graduates. As well, every student in Shenandoah Valley, it is so instrumental in their academic and spiritual growth that you be there. Thank you to the alumni friends of Shenandoah Valley Academy and the Potomac Conference that have sponsored this wonderful school for the Seventh-day Adventist education that is possible for those young people. Good luck to all of you, and always let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven.